What is going on, everybody? It's the 163rd episode of the Club and Sub podcast. Obviously, as you can see, our normal host, John Stargarian, is away on a work trip, so you will be graciously presented by me, I should say, as the host, Lags, and we have as guest Art, at Mr. Electrocute on Twitter these days. Art, how you doing?
I'm doing good, Danny. Thank you for having me. I have big shoes to fill with John not here. I'm going to try to fill that gap. Obviously not as good looking, but we'll see if we can get it done in his absence.
Yeah, for sure. I know we were talking about the last card a little bit, and I know I didn't have any bets myself, but how did you do yourself?
Yeah, last week wasn't too good for me. I've been spending most of my time tape studying this card. So, my last card was more based on memory. I did a little tape study. I was big on sort of Gabriel Benitez. I thought he was a little bit better, but man, Jim Miller looks good, man. He's 40 and he's still trucking along. Doesn't look like he's fading. So he's signed for UFC 300. It's going to be hard to fade him. He looks good still at 40 years old. Keeps going, man. So
yeah, he's hunting for that UFC 300, no doubt.
I thought it was one of those cases where they had the UFC had a plan for him at UFC 300, and I was like, yeah, for sure he's going to get knocked out or some kind of injuries so that they can't do it. But he came pretty unscathed, and we'll see him again soon.
Yeah. Be great to see Jim, and then I guess we'll just get right into the card. We have 12 good fights. It would be. I was looking at some of the cancellations. It's actually crazy. We actually would have had a much bigger and a more banger of a card. I mean, we had the Volkanovski and the Makhachev fights were originally Volkanovski and Topuria, and then Makhachev and Oliveira were originally scheduled, as well as the Rakic Blachowicz fight and the Dom Reyes Olberg fight.
Yeah. So crazy. The UFC's in my home city this week, so I had my alerts going on, and every time, this fight's announced, this fight's canceled, this one's announced, this one's canceled. So it was heartbreaking. Some of those were some really good fights, and so now the card's all right. A lot of Canadian talent, and anytime the fight card's in Canada, I think they try to get all the Canadian talent on there, and it's one of those things where I'll be honest, as a Canadian, they're not the greatest, they're not the biggest names, and they sort of have to fit them on the card. And sometimes they have to find good matchups for them. And so they're really scraping the bottom of the barrel sometimes. And that's what we get. So maybe it's not some of the biggest names on the card, but should be some entertaining fights, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And speaking of Canadians and speaking of particular line movement with the Canadians this week, Malcolm Gordon and Jimmy Flick starting off the night. Art, what do you think about the line movement? What do you think about the fight?
Yeah, so I started my tape study on Malcolm Gordon there. Canadian, so far he's 2-4 in the UFC. I watched those fights as 2 wins. I thought they could have gone the other way. I think he could easily be 0-6 in the UFC. One of them was the arm injury against Bondar. Bondar's posting on that right arm, and then eventually just breaks it. So who knows how that fight could have gone. And then the fight before that, he fights Francisco Figueiredo. I thought that it was just Figueiredo giving away the fight. Figueiredo had some top time in round 1. He was controlling him, and then all of a sudden he drops down for a heel hook, and then he lets Gordon back up. Gordon rained down some ground and pound. He wins that round. Figueiredo in round 2, he destroys him. Gordon's trying for the takedown, can't get there. It's all Figueiredo. And then round 3, what does Figueiredo do? He comes out with a flying knee, and he ends up on bottom and gives Gordon the fight. So if he loses that fight to Figueiredo, he's cut. And then he wins it. They give him Bondar. He wins that by injury. And so, again, I think he could be 0-6. When I tape it, I'm like, oh, man, he's not very good. I'm really excited. And so now I'm going to start the Jimmy Flick side. And Jimmy Flick looks really good. And then just recently with his last couple of fights getting knocked out by ground and pound, I mean, man, these guys are really scraping the bottom of the barrel for talent and stuff. And it looks like one of those fights where we're trying to get Malcolm Gordon a winnable fight here. So let's get this guy off of 2 TKO losses, 2 years retirement before that. But yeah, the line movement was crazy. I first taped it. I thought it could be pretty even. I thought, Jimmy Flick on the ground, he's really good with submissions. He loves the arm triangle. And then Malcolm Gordon, his takedown defense hasn't been great. Allowing 10 of 11 takedowns so far. Some of that to McIvan. He's a great grappler, but there are other takedowns to lesser known guys. And so I think there's a clear path to victory for Jimmy Flick. And I was surprised by the line movement. It was up to somebody messaged me yesterday, this is a world. What world are we living in that Malcolm Gordon's -200, -210? So I don't know. In terms of the breakdown though, I do think I'll be honest. I like Jimmy Flick, and I posted on my timeline there. There's a couple of variables that I want to talk about, and then why I like Jimmy Flick. One is that I know striking wise, if it's a straight stand up fight, he's not very good on the feet, but he likes to stand in kicking range, and he keeps a high guard, so he's pretty safe on the feet. He likes to throw that right kick a lot. So 10% of the time is that right high kick, and then 14% of the time is the right low kick. So he's going to be standing in kicking range. Malcolm Gordon's the one going to have to close the distance. And I found with Malcolm Gordon, he really overextends on a lot of his shots. When he's throwing the 1-1-2 or the 1-2, you can see him almost trip, sometimes like lose his balance sort of thing. I think the level change for Jimmy Flick is there. I think he can do it all day long and get Gordon down. And then once it hits the ground, honestly, if Jimmy Flick's on top, I think he could look minus 400 at times. Like if he just controls him, if it looks anything like we've seen in his earlier career with Jimmy Flick on the ground, he'll just control Gordon. I wouldn't be surprised to see a finish super early. Like I've been super impressed with some of the transitions, the grappling from Jimmy Flick, the Contender Series fight against Smith, just going from submission to submission to submission. Some of these submissions were out of this world. So if you're thinking prime Flick, against Gordon, I don't, it's probably close, but I think Flick has more upside for the finish there. I think for Gordon to win, he's going to have to stay on the outside, pop some jabs, keep the fight standing, and probably win a decision there.
Yeah, when the line originally opened and Gordon was like a slight pick 'em, like minus 130, or a slight more than pick 'em, I should say, minus 125, minus 130, I was happy, like passing him. To me, this is two fades. Flick has a bit of a cardio issue. I just feel like Gordon, a little bit of a better striker, better cardio again. So slight favorite I'm fine with. But like, again, like we were kind of just talking about, minus 200 Gordon, it's like, I'm probably going to have to bet Flick, but I'm just kind of waiting for the weigh-ins, just obviously with all this line movement and everything. But yeah, no, obviously the grappling path is more than there. He's just fairly hittable on the feet as well.
Yeah, he's definitely hittable, but I go back to the Smith fight. He took a clean front kick to the face, and, he was fine. The two losses that he has by knockout, again, like the most recent ones, Charles Johnson by ground and pound. Charles Johnson's huge for the division. Yeah, Flick even got him down, controlled him a little bit. Very impossible to submit. So it's just bad matchups, I think, for Flick. Even the one after that, he got his leg chewed up. They didn't really have the leg there, so then he has to shoot for a desperation takedown in round 2 there, and then he gets ground and pounded. So the losses are by ground and pound. I don't know if Malcolm Gordon, I know Malcolm Gordon can be on the ground. I think there's a huge advantage for Flick if it does hit the mat. So, give me the Flick side, especially at plus 170, plus 180. If I think it's going to be a toss-up, you got to take the value side.
Yep, agreed. And we move to another Canadian. I believe we have few streaking in a row here, I should say 6 or 7 in a row. Here we got Jasmine Jasudavicius and Priscilla Cachoeira. I'll start off. I think this is a pretty short and simple one. I think they are looking to have the Canadian fighter come home with a win here. Obviously, I think Jasmine has a clear grappling path here. Priscilla's one of the worst grapplers to ever grace the UFC. This should be pretty easy. Obviously, Jasmine's fairly hittable on the feet, so I guess people wanting to lay that juice, maybe it's a bit queasy, but I think she's a safe parlay piece this week. What about yourself?
Yeah, I'm not sold. Like I saw minus 400 at times and stuff. I think it's too expensive. I know she has a huge grappling edge, and I think that's baked into the line, and that's why it's minus 400. The market's aware that Priscilla Cachoeira is a fish on the ground, but that's why it's there. If you told me the fight was standing, there's no way Priscilla should be Jasmine should be minus 400 if the fight stays standing. And so I go through the Jasmine tape, and I really noticed that for Jasmine to win rounds, it's through grappling. And so I look at the rounds where she gets the takedown, she gets top control. Then I look at the judges' scorecard. She's winning the rounds, any rounds that she can get a takedown or top control. All right. When the rounds that she can't win, so she fought like Tracy Cortez, couldn't get Tracy Cortez down, lost all of those rounds. She fought Natalia Silva, couldn't get her down, lost all of those rounds there. Even against Kay Hansen in her UFC debut, I think, she got the takedowns in rounds 1 and 2. In rounds 3, she couldn't get it, and she lost that third round by standing. So for Jasmine, I think she's going to have to obviously get the takedown. But then I go more into the numbers. I see Jasmine hasn't attempted a submission in her UFC career. She has all this grappling advantage. She has all this top time. I find that her top pressure is pretty good. She keeps not a lot of distance chest to chest. She spends a lot of time in half guard. And again, she hasn't attempted a submission. So if she doesn't attempt a submission, doesn't submit Cachoeira, Cachoeira is pretty durable, and I think she can take some decent punishment. They call her Zombie Girl because she can take some punishment, right? So Jasmine's not the hardest hitter, especially on the feet. If the TKO comes, it might be from ground and pound, but on the feet, Priscilla's probably not. Jasmine's probably not knocking out Priscilla on the feet, right? So that's why I think it's a little bit expensive. I think it's reliant on the takedown, and if you look at the takedowns from Jasmine, most of them come from the body lock up against the outside trip against the fence. She doesn't really shoot blast doubles or single legs in the middle of the fence. She more pushes the opponent up against the fence. Outside trips gets them down there. For Priscilla, it's a little bit easier. I know her takedown defense is garbage, right? And it's against those single legs, double legs, but against the fence, I think she can use the fence to sort of wall walk her way back up, make it grindy, and then get taken back down again. I think you're going to see a lot of top time. I think it's going to be a boring fight. But I think, honestly, in the third round, if Jasmine can get the takedowns going, get him in round 1 and round 2, she can probably bank 2 rounds. But then in the third round, honestly, I'm not looking past the Cachoeira KO round 3. I like that somewhat of a play. We've seen Cachoeira sort of have somewhat of an urgency to her when she's down. She comes forward. And she does have hands. She has power in her hands. That's the biggest thing going for her, is that she can throw power. She's knocked out, a couple of people. She has that KO power. So I think she's live. I just don't want to lay minus 400, minus 500 on Jasmine. I'm okay with taking the over 2.5 because, again, I don't think Jasmine really uses the submissions. I know Cachoeira has a weakness towards submissions, but if she's not attempting submissions and Cachoeira can take the damage, I like the over 2.5 if you don't want to lay the money line on Jasmine straight up. I think Jasmine decision is also good, but 2.5 is pretty safe. And then a small sprinkle on Cachoeira KO round 3.
I was going to say, I'm glad you actually did bring up the total in this fight, because I actually was originally leaning under just because of that grappling path. But then, as you mentioned, and like you see in the tape, obviously, the submission attempts really just aren't there for Jasmine. Yeah. She has good takedowns, but just,
we were talking, honestly, so we were talking, it's potential you could get a point deduction at, like in the comments there, plus 2,000. Cachoeira, if she's getting grappled a lot, she is, a couple of fence grabs here and there, a couple of hair pulls maybe sort of thing, but not out of the question. And then anytime you have a point deduction, draw is always live. Cachoeira coming up, maybe she loses first 2 rounds and then she comes forward in round 3, doesn't get the finish, but she gets, Jasmine knocked down a couple of times. Draw could be live. So, small sprinkles, but if you're dying for action, otherwise, I'm okay with passing.
Yeah. Agreed. Especially like you said, if you think Priscilla's getting up and down, maybe you have that grabbing the fence and there you go.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right, we'll start off with you for the next fight. We got another Canadian. Johan Lainez is taking on Sam Patterson in a welterweight fight. What do you think?
Yeah, okay. So the first thing for me that stands out for this is Sam Patterson's a massive lightweight. He's 6'3" with a 78-inch reach. And throughout his fighting career, he's sort of used that reach and height to his advantage. He stays on the outside. He pops a lot of kicks, pops a jab, things like that. But this fight's at welterweight. And Lainez is a huge, heavy hitter. He loves that overhand right. He throws that a bunch of times. He does have a nice, long, lunging jab that he steps into. With Patterson being the smaller guy and Lainez already being a big welterweight, I think there's a big power discrepancy. Patterson's always been that tall guy where he's relied on somewhat of the tall man defense. He just leans back a little bit. He keeps his head sort of stationary, doesn't move it off the center line a lot, keeps it on the silver platter, and it just sets it up so right. That's so nice for that overhand right. If you're not moving it and you're trying these like naked leg kicks that he tends to throw, if Lainez can close the distance, he can land one of these overhand rights. I think he can put him out. I don't really think that the fight goes down to the ground much. Like, I know Patterson has a nasty front choke that he sort of defaults when you shoot in for him, but I just don't know if Lainez needs to shoot for a takedown, and so I don't know if the submission's there. I know we looked at the submission number. It just wasn't high enough for me to play the Sam Patterson submission. So I like the Lainez side. I know there are cardio concerns with Lainez, and he's had some issues with that. I think the one fight that he lost was it Gabe Green that he lost? It was more of he was winning the first round and then ended up just cardio fell off a cliff. He ended up losing that fight because of the cardio. And then I thought he somewhat addressed it. You could see him being a little bit better in his next fight, going to decision in his next fight. I think if he just takes his 10% off of his punches, maybe doesn't throw the overhand as looping, maybe if the right hand comes a little bit straighter, I think that will do wonders for his cardio. The other thing about the cardio concerns is Sam Patterson, because he's been so long and so tall, he's content with standing on the outside, popping these jabs, popping these leg kicks. He doesn't really push the pace. It's not like Sam Patterson's engaging in grappling. He's not like in-your-face pressure fighter. He stands at a distance, waits for his opponents to come forward. So if Linus is tired, all he has to do is stand back a little bit. Patterson's waiting to counter him. He just stands back, picks maybe a Yoel Romero where he has a couple of blitzes here and there, and he gets through these rounds and he can get to decision. But I don't think it gets there. I think Linus probably finishes him pretty early, probably round 1 or 2 KO for me. Otherwise, yeah, maybe a Patterson decision, but that's where I lean.
I think it should be a fun fight and definitely more of an entertaining fight than a betting one, because to me, I feel like this is mostly just two guys who don't have the best defense. And like you had mentioned, Linus definitely the harder hitter of the two, and I don't expect pretty much any grappling to go on. And obviously, like you had mentioned, the concerns with the cardio on Linus. I don't think Patterson, again, like you already had mentioned, the pace is just not really there with him. So I feel like this could be actually an overs fight if they're just not down in the pocket just swinging. But I'm not reliant to try to trust that either. I think this probably does finish violently and somebody is taking a can to snap.
Yeah, it would be a butt clenching over 2.5.
Oh, yeah.
It's like
there's no defense involved. You're dodging, watching yourself.
Yeah, you're trying to get the live bet lining come because you can see it. You can see it's just his head straight up, and he's just missing. It's it's coming, and so I think Linus could get there.
Yep. All right, Jillian Robertson in our next fight is taking on Viana, and this is at 115 pounds. And I'll start this one off. I do like the Jillian side, especially starting it off with her at 115 pounds. I think this weight class is much more suited for her. Obviously, her skill is that grappling, and it mostly relies on her being the more physical girl, which I feel like in this instance she probably is, but more so Polyana is just her willingness to play guard when she's on her back. I feel like it's just a recipe for Jillian to just land easy takedowns, settle top control, and potentially even find a late submission. But I think this is more often than not just the Jillian decision. I don't expect her to stand too often or stay striking too often. But Polyana, I just give her a slight edge on the feet, nothing crazy.
Yeah, I obviously tend to agree. I think this is one of those setup matches for Robertson, one of the Canadians. Find me somebody that doesn't have the greatest takedown defense. Find me somebody that doesn't have really power on the feet. Find me somebody that I'm probably better at on the ground, and that's Polyana Viana, right? Both girls, most of their wins coming from submission. 70% of Robertson's wins by submission. Viana 76% by submission. But then you go a little bit deeper in terms of what are those submissions. For Robertson, 3 of them by armbar, 6 of them, so a majority of them by rear naked choke, and she does have a ground and pound win. Whereas on the Viana side, 5 of her submission wins are from armbar, 2 of them from rear naked choke. So it just illustrates, without going into the fight tape, Viana's on her back almost every single fight. And she's submitting these guys with zero top game, no real, none of these guys, Emily Martin, these girls aren't in the UFC anymore. She's getting these cakewalk sort of matchups. If you go back and look at her records, any of the wins that she has are all less than 500 type fighters. So I think for Jillian, it's a bad matchup for Polyana Viana. Jillian's so good on top. I really don't see her getting armbarred from bottom. And I think Polyana Viana is probably round 1 armbar or bust. I do agree it's probably Jillian by decision, but it wouldn't surprise me to see Jillian get the back and sink in a choke or a rear naked choke sort of thing. So I remember going back, watching some Viana tape. I can't remember who it was, but she did get mounted. And the first thing that she does as soon as she gets mounted, she turns and gives up her back. So you do that against Robertson, I think she's going to choke her out. I'm not confident enough to just play decision because, again, if Jillian wins by submission, it's the right read was there, but you lost that bet anyway. I might look at something like a -3.5. I think she probably wins a 30-27 by decision, or she can finish her, some sort of KO. Again, the KO would have to come by ground and pound. If you look at the Jillian Robertson versus Priscilla Cachoeira, same sort of thing where Cachoeira was not great on the ground. She had her mounted ground and pound there. The referee could have stopped it. So the KO's live. I know the KO's it's pretty high up there, and it probably doesn't come from the feet. But yeah, I think it's all Jillian Robertson. I don't really see many paths to victory for Viana. Not a lot of extended top time, not a lot of winning the stand-up. Like, she'll have to keep it standing and stay on the outside, but that's not really her game, right? She doesn't really do that. Like you said, she almost pulls guard. The takedown defense is so bad that you don't know, was that a takedown defense or did she actually jump guard, and give it up, right? So
Yep.
She spent time on the ground. I think it's all Jillian.
Yeah, and that happened a ton in her last fight against Ricci.
Yeah.
Or 2 fights ago, I should say.
Yeah.
And then speaking on the sub number, like you were talking about a little bit, yeah, it's only plus 140. Like, at that point, you're basically trying to pick a round as well attached to that, whereas the KO is plus 750, a little bit more juice there, obviously.
I mean, yeah, I got some early Robertson numbers, so I'm okay with that, and I'm not willing to force a decision line or something like that. Like I said, the minus 3.5 is not a bad look if you have access to it, because I think she wins, but yeah, I think it's a clear Jillian side, maybe a parlay piece for me.
All right. Next, I will start off with you here, Art. We got Ramon Taveras and Cirque City in a rematch.
Yeah, so this is one of those rare occurrences where you have a rematch. The first fight was on Dana White Contender Series. Both guys looked pretty good, and I'll be honest, it looked like Taveras was landing a straight left. He likes to stand southpaw, and he has a nasty straight left. He's one of those boxers, but Cirque City clipped him. They went down to the ground, and all of a sudden the referee comes in and stops it right away. It's like super early stoppage, enough for Dana White to say this is an early stoppage, give him a rematch sort of thing. And so in the rematch, I think the market's overpricing this. They see the first fight, they see Cirque City sort of drop Taveras, and they think that it's probably going to go the same thing. So the total for this was set at 1.5. I think it's too low. I think for Cirque City, he hasn't really shown a ton of KO power on the feet. I know he has good hands, good kicks and stuff, but Taveras is pretty durable. He's a good boxer himself. It wouldn't surprise me to see Taveras win a decision because of his hands. For Taveras, for me, it was how good is Taveras really? Like, he has a couple of KO wins. You go back to his record, same thing with the Viana side, where a lot of those wins are coming off of subpar competition. A lot of cans like Charles Barnett or something like. So
30 and 40 fighters.
Yeah. He's like 44 years old and stuff. You're supposed to win those fights, right? And so how good is he really? You don't really know, right? Is it just a setup or, is the record, whatever? So it's one of those question marks where I don't really know how good Ramon Taveras is. On the film tape, he looks good, fast hands. And again, straight left is pretty good. Cirque City is pretty durable though. So I like the over 1.5, and I'll be honest, because I don't really want to pick a side. I know the Cirque City is probably juiced. He could probably win a decision, but I think because of the market's correcting too much and taking the over 1.5, the under 1.5, thinking that it's just going to go the same way. We see it all the time. No 2 fights are the same. That's why we play these numbers, right? So it's more of a numbers thing for me, and based on what I've seen historically from Cirque City, just not being like crazy puncher. I know he got caught, but what are the chances of it getting repeated versus something different happening the second time?
So from a person who hasn't watched or wasn't avidly watching Dana White's Contender Series and then retaping this fight, I'm glad that they did end up rebooking this fight, because I thought that this fight could build into a banger, which it kind of was already. I think on the Taveras side, I think for me, the strength of schedule is just really just glaring to me. It's just he's fighting a bunch of nobodies. He is finishing them in impressive fashion, and more often than not, obviously, like I said, very easy. But his last couple fights, he's looking fairly hittable. Obviously, in that City fight, gets dropped, early stoppage, understandable. I just feel like there's a lot of question marks here. I think his chin is a bit of a question mark. Him in extended fights, big question mark. I feel like in general, he is just a one-dimensional power boxer, which could take him fairly far. He hits pretty hard, and he is a very good boxer at that. But I like the well-roundedness of City, personally.
Yeah, I could see it. I'm playing it safer with the over 1.5. I'll probably play the over 2.5 and maybe decision. I might sprinkle maybe a split decision even. I think it could be close. I'm not sleeping on Taveras. I think he does have good hands. I get the City side. I'm just not willing to lay the juice. So I'll just play it safe and play the total for me.
All right. Nice. All right, next fight we got Charles Jourdain and Sean Woodson, a featherweight fight. Another one where I think Canadian's going to be looking good here. I like Charles Jourdain. I don't expect him to face much grappling. Obviously, we saw a little bit of that from Woodson in his last fight, but I mean they're half-hearted takedowns. I don't think he has much of a grappling game at all. I will say that seeing on paper the 9-inch reach advantage for Sean might be an issue for Charles, but Sean doesn't really keep his distance that great. I think even in his last fight against Dennis, he had a 5-inch reach advantage, and Dennis was closing distance fairly easily. Same with the Saldana fight. He had a 6-inch reach advantage there, closing distance fairly easily there. I do think this is a fairly easy fight for Jourdain to close the distance, land the harder shots, and potentially even find a finish himself. What do you think, Art?
Yeah, I tend to agree. And so first thing I did was what's Jourdain's record against longer reach opponents? And what's funny is that Jourdain has never fought anybody with a shorter reach. He's always at the reach disadvantage. So he does have experience closing that distance. He's probably good, really good on the feet. Woodson, one of those boxers, really weird frame for the division, 6'2", 78-inch reach. He's going to have that reach advantage over everybody, longest in the division. So for me, it was, I think Jourdain has a clear advantage on the ground if it gets there, but I just don't think it gets there. I think Jourdain has only attempted 6 takedowns in his UFC career. Only one of them has been successful. And then on the flip side, Woodson has elite takedown defense. He's stuffing these. You figure with a guy with such long legs, that'd be easy to get in on, get him down, double leg easy like that. He's seen 47 takedown attempts, only allowing 7 of them. So again, I think Jourdain has an edge on the ground. I just don't know if it gets there. So in a fight that stays standing, Woodson with the 9-inch reach advantage, honestly, it's one of those things. Again, it's more about the price. If I had to pick a fighter, I'm taking Jourdain all the time, right? But the juice on that side, I think Woodson, there could be value on that side. And again, it's just one of those things where Jourdain's a big leg kicker. He's really good kicking legs, switching stances. What he'll do is he'll normally mirror his opponents. If his opponent goes orthodox, he's going orthodox. Opponent goes southpaw, he'll go southpaw. It's because he likes the outside low kick, and he'll blast that low kick there. Woodson with the long, skinny legs, he's going to eat those leg kicks, and they're going to add up fast. The only thing that worries me, though, is that when Jourdain is throwing those leg kicks, because of that 9-inch reach, he's in counter territory. Normally, you throw leg kicks, you're in leg distance. You're not worried about the counter there, but the counter could land if Jourdain throws it and he's not careful about the distance management. So I like Woodson. The other thing I wanted to bring up, if you watch the Jourdain fight, who does it fight? Nathaniel Wood. If you go back and watch it, one of the things that Jourdain likes to do is he doesn't really move back when his opponent comes forward. He keeps this really high guard, and he sort of lets you punch the guard, and he stands there in the pocket with the high guard. So what Nathaniel Wood was able to do is just outside trip him all day. He gets in close, outside trip him, drops him down to the ground. I think Nathaniel Wood had 9 takedowns in that fight just because he wasn't trying to go down to the ground with him, but because it's there, you can trip him and throw him down to the ground. The reason I bring it up is that I don't think Woodson's going to proactively look for the ground. Like you said, in his career, he's never looked for a takedown other than his last fight. It sort of threw me off why he was looking for a takedown. But with Jourdain using the high guard, protecting the head, I think the body's open, right? And I think when he's circling off, he keeps that high guard circling. Woodson loves to go to the body. And with such a long reach, even if Jourdain thinks he's out of distance and he has to circle off to the left or right, Woodson loves to hook to the body on the circle, on the break. I think Woodson, if he's going to find some success, it's going to be through body shots. I think you can wear on him. Potentially finding a finish. I'm not going to put money on a Woodson finish. If I am taking a Woodson side, it's probably going to be decision because just Jourdain, pretty durable historically. But I think he does have a path to victory through body work. I think if Jourdain's going to win, it's going to be through leg kicks. Wouldn't surprise me to see the fight going to decision, though.
All right. And maybe you could even get a decent plus 3.5 number if you're looking on that side as well, too.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, well, I will start off with this one again because I actually have a play on this one. Brad Katona and Garrett Armfield. Again, I do think this is another good fight for Key. I know we'll just keep it rolling. I guess we don't really got to mention it every single fight like others do. But I do like Brad Katona in this spot here. I love his well-rounded game. I know people might say, he's not, not a big finisher, not this or that, but he's just a solid guy that knows how to win. Good striker, good grappling base, good cardio. And I think that's more than enough here against Garrett Armfield, who I just feel like is more or less a regional talent, has a bit of finishing upside, but his striking's okay. I don't think his grappling offensively or defensively is that good, to be honest with you. So I feel like Brad in any area of this fight, I think he's more than capable of handling Garrett Armfield. So yeah, round 3 decision for Brad at -115. I like it.
Not a bad play. And I'll be honest, I'm on the other side. And so you can see a pattern for me. I'm fading Canadians. I'm from hometown. Right. I have no problem betting against my countrymen.
You're going to be booing while you're sitting there.
What's that?
So you're going to be booing all the Canadians while you're sitting there.
Yeah, well, I'm a fan of money. So as long as it gets me to the window, I'm there. So for me, it's just the fight tape for Brad Katona it's hard to get through. It's because Brad Katona plays. So he has a couple of 5-round fights in his regional scene. Cardio is never an issue for Brad Katona. He can continue to come forward and push a pace. The issue with Brad Katona is his game plan is pretty much the same every single fight, other than the last fight in tough finals. But for Brad Katona, he's always looking to sort of push you up against the cage. He'll throw some strikes to sort of close the distance, and then he pushes you up against the cage. Now it's cage pushing. Now he'll drop down for a double leg, doesn't get it. He'll drop down for a single leg, doesn't get it. Now he'll drop you down, get the double leg, but his top control is not great, so you're back up. And now you're back down, now you're back up. It's one of those things where it's like, for Brad Katona, his game plan tends to be, I know he's smart because that's the way to win. And it's sort of like a cheat code to say, like, he doesn't have a ton of KO power. He's maybe not the most technical, like, savvy submission guy, but he finds a way to win by cage control. He finds a way to win by, a lot of his decisions. That's why most of his fights go to decisions, whether he loses or wins. It's just he pushes that pace and he pushes you up against the feints. He makes it like sort of a grindy fight. What really sticks out to me for Armfield is I thought the regional tape looked pretty good. I thought he was very well-rounded, decently fast hands, decently okay on the ground. He did get called up on short notice to fight David Onama. Now, David Onama, it was up a weight class. It was on short notice, and David Onama is huge for that division. For Armfield to come in, he was able to push Onama up against the fence. He was able to control the clinch scenarios, get off the fence, circle him. Like, he was controlling and pushing David Onama around. So for me, it sort of signals maybe Katona won't have that success to push him on the fence, or maybe Armfield can keep it at range, sort of, pick him apart on the feet. What I found for Armfield is he's very busy, very good counter striker. So every time he gets hit one time, he's going to return 3 or more shots, right? So for me, it comes down to, one, the number on Brad Katona it's too high. I see it more of a 50-50 fight. I think it could be a very close split decision, if I'm being honest. And it really comes down to what the judges are seeing. Are they really putting weight on cage control time, top control time? Brad Katona is not a big ground and pound guy. When he does get you down, he's more top control, laying on you sort of thing, right? And, it's a clear path to victory for him. But if Armfield can get up, he's probably going to land more strikes, maybe do more damage. And then what do you weight more? Is it damage? Is it top control? So it really depends on the referees or the judges in these type of fights. I could see both guys winning. For me, again, it's just go down to the number. I'm taking the underdog because I think Armfield can make it a close fight. I don't think Brad Katona is super great at everything. Brad Katona does have a granite chin. He's taking some big shots. So I don't really see Armfield knocking him out. And then on the flip side, because he's not going to go to the ground much with Katona, he's not going to really submit. Katona's pretty good at defending the submissions as well. For me, it makes sense, the over 2.5. And I'll be honest, because Katona fights always go to decision. Armfield's not going to really knock him out, probably not going to get submitted. I think the over 2.5 is pretty safe, but I also like the Armfield side as well. So it makes sense to do an Armfield decision. I think that was plus 350, plus 375. Not a bad look for a fight that could be pretty close. And then on DraftKings or BetOnline, the Armfield plus 3.5. It makes so much sense to me for a fight that goes to decision more often than not to take the underdog getting 3.5 points. That basically means I'm thinking Armfield wins at least 1 round. And out of the 3 rounds, if Brad Katona can win the 2 rounds, I think Armfield can win 1. And if Katona wins at 29-28, we cash the plus 3.5. So I'm okay with that side. I think, I take a little bit off the money line, but I get insurance of boring Katona decision, 29-28 sort of thing. The only way you lose is Katona 30-27s, or he like meme KOs him or something like that. So those are my plays. I think it's more about the numbers than anything. For me, I like the Armfield side.
All right. Head to head. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
Love it. All right. We got a banger of a first fight for the main card, Art, and I'll let you start it off. We got Arnold Allen and Movsar Evloev. Take it away.
Yeah. So this one, for me, I think the market's priced for it, and Evloev's the favorite for a reason. For the Arnold Allen side, I think people are quick to remember a lot of his impressive wins recently, like the Dan Hooker win, Calvin Kattar win. Even though that was an injury, losing a decision to Max Holloway, which you're supposed to be losing anyway. He's looked pretty good in his fights, right? And can't really take anything away from Arnold Allen and his striking. The problem is that when's the last time Arnold Allen actually faced a grappler? You go back to maybe like Nick Lentz. Nick Lentz at the tail end of his career, like not able to get the takedown. The last time Arnold Allen was taken down was 2008. 2018. So it's been a long time since we've seen Arnold Allen on his back. Early in Arnold Allen's career, getting taken down by Mads Burnell, getting taken down by Makwan Americani, he was losing those fights. Makwan Americani was on him. He was losing. He lost round one. The Mads Burnell, he was losing. He had to throw up a Hail Mary submission. Go back and watch him. So Arnold Allen, there's a huge discrepancy or a huge hole on the ground that I'm not really sure has been patched because we haven't seen it. The last time he got taken down, he was controlled and was losing, and then he hasn't been taken down since. And so what I do know is that Movsar Evloev is a better grappler than anybody Arnold Allen has faced. And so Movsar Evloev, he has cardio for days. He's going to be attacking these takedowns. So even if Arnold Allen has like a 50% takedown defense, 60% takedown defense, if Evloev continues to just shoot takedowns, he will continue to get Allen down to the ground. Okay, Allen has good get-ups. Okay, great. But now he's getting taken down again. He's going to keep on doing that. So how does Arnold Allen win extended minutes by defending the takedown, by getting up, spending time off his back? I just don't know if he does. Evloev seems to be one of those decision machines, take you down, ride you out sort of thing. Evloev decision makes the most sense. Don't really see a ton of finishes by him, not attempting a ton of submissions, which is weird for a guy that gets so many takedowns, rides top control to not have the submission. I know the submission line's way out there. It's worth a sprinkle on Evloev's submission just because, again, Allen hasn't faced a ton of grapplers. And when he did, he got taken down. Americani only has one round of cardio, so you expect to lose that one as the fight goes on. It wouldn't be surprised to see Evloev winning by submission. I know he's talked about not really having a finish recently, and he really wants to get that finish. So if it does happen, Arnold can take a lot of damage. I think if it does come, it's probably by submission. The safest bet is Evloev by decision, I think, but it is a little bit juiced. But I like the Evloev side. I have his money line play, and then I'll probably sprinkle some submission.
Nice. Yeah, and I wish I would have looked into the Evloev side a little earlier because, again, I do think those early money line prices were good because I do think, again, another clear grappling path here, and it's hard to fade these guys that have a chain wrestling grappling path that it's very easy just to bank on and rely on. That's how it is. And to shout out a friend of the pod, Sean Orr, I think he described this fight perfectly, and Movsar in general, and a lot of these other elite guys. And a lot of people try to find these tiny little instances in their fights like Movsar or Islam, where they're not looking minus 300, minus 400, and then blow it out of proportion. And then we get lines like this, or even I would say just slightly more juice lines, but are more playable than in actuality what they might seem like. Again, perfect example would be the Islam last fight against Volkanovski. Volkanovski coming in on short notice. Again, a lot of sentiment from the last fight, but
yeah, a lot of recency bias, right? And
yep.
They don't. A lot of people don't go deep into the fight tape, look into the careers, maybe it's the specific matchups on who they're beating. Right? Arnold Allen has impressive wins, but they're all strikers. None of them,
they're all
Max Holloway's not going to take you down and control you, right? So you sort of throw that fight out, not even consider it because it doesn't really apply in this fight.
Yep, agreed. All right, next fight on the main card, we got MAB and Chris Curtis. I actually like the Chris Curtis side here. I have a bet here or anything, but I lean the Chris Curtis side, and I understand why people wanted to play him, and just more so I feel just because I don't think that there's going to be a ton of grappling from the MAB side, and so he's fairly hittable in his approach, trying to bring on the pace, bring on the volume, but I get Chris Curtis is a bit of a slow starter, but I just feel like MAB will be available to be hit where Curtis can land those harder shots and optically look much better. So I understand why people were playing Chris Curtis early, but his low volume nature early would definitely scare me away with this kind of a price tag.
Yeah, I get it. So starting on the Chris Curtis side, I think the Jack Hermanson fight, he really laid out the game plan of how to beat Chris Curtis. If you watch that fight, it's Jack Hermanson on the outside, a lot of leg kicks, a lot of stick and move, pop him sort of thing. And you can see Chris Curtis visibly frustrated, saying, "Come on, come fight me, come into the middle," sort of thing. And so Jack Hermanson wins that fight, wins by decision. Then he faces Joaquin Buckley, wins by knockout. Great fight there. Then faces Kelvin Gastelum. Kelvin Gastelum uses that same game plan, stays on the outside, pops, sticks and moves, and things like that. Same thing with the Nasruddin Imavov fight before the no contest. Imavov's on the outside. You can see in those three fights, just Curtis really visibly frustrated with how the fight's going. It's just MAB, he doesn't fight that way. MAB's always in your face. He's in the pocket. I love the description today. I saw MEB is sort of like a hockey fighter. He'll grab you, he'll put your shirt around your head and sort of punch you with uppercuts. That's MEB. He'll do that for 3 rounds. He'll be in your face. He'll push the pace. They call him power bar because he does push the pace. He's always in your face. But that's the fight that Chris Curtis wants. He wants to be in the pocket. He trains with Sean Strickland all the time. So he sees that they're always in the pocket, just banging Philly shell, rolling with it. I think for MAB, it's a bad matchup for him because, again, that's how Chris Curtis excels. If he can reach you, he has great hands. He works the body, very strong in the clinch himself. I know MAB, he wants to go to the clinch. He wants to throw these uppercuts and stuff, but you see the back on Chris Curtis. He doesn't let people control him. He has elite takedown defense, so I don't think it's going down to the ground. MAB doesn't really shoot a lot of takedowns as it is. So if the fight stays standing, I sort of prefer Chris Curtis just to be the better striker in close, in sort of like a dirty boxing fight sort of thing. It's his fight, it's his style, and that's what he excels at. So for MAB, he's sort of historically been one of those guys, again, that's pushing you. They're not really used to being in your face, and they sort of wilt under pressure. So MAB has a couple of like finishes in the 3rd round. I just don't know if Chris Curtis is that guy to wilt under pressure. He hasn't historically. MAB has been chin checked by Chidi and Jokwani, so it wouldn't surprise me to see a Chris Curtis finish. It probably goes over 2.5, and it's probably a Chris Curtis decision, if I'm being honest. I like the Chris Curtis side. I could see it being close and gritty at times, but I just think he's better at what he does versus what MAB does. And so for MAB, I don't think he can replicate that stick and move outside, low kicks type game plan. That's just not him. So it would be like a whole redefinition of how he fights. For me, give me the Chris Curtis side. I know it's a little bit juiced at this point, but I think he wins a decision.
Okay. I think what is an interesting talking point, though, and I think the reason why I've just never been high on Curtis throughout his career is just I feel like a lot of his wins are just big moments, like the Buckley fight, for instance. Wasn't looking that good. Buckley was styling on him, knocks him out, and then kind of the same thing with the the Phil Hawes fight.
Yeah, I know people reference like the volume output of Chris Curtis, but if you take away those Hermanson fights, the Gastelum fight, he's low volume because he can't get to you. These guys are circling around him and dancing around him, right? So it really affects the number of stats that he's showing in terms of strikes thrown because he's not throwing jabs and straights when you're outside on the other side of the fence, right? But when you're in close, I don't really have any concerns with his volume and output. That's true. That's
fair. Fair point. All right. Next fight, we got Mike Malott and Neil Magny. Art, what do you think?
Okay, so we talked about Canadians and we talked about setup fights. For me, this is clear-cut showcase fight for Mike Malott. Mike Malott, for me, he's probably going to be top 10 by the end of the year in the division. Everything has been really impressive on his fight tape. I know he's been somewhat of a slight favorite in a lot of his fights, but for me, he's covered that price and every time he's come out. He's really good on the feet, really good on the ground. For me, again, he's able to switch stances. So what I've noticed is that when his opponents go orthodox, he goes southpaw. With his opponents go southpaw, he goes orthodox, and it's because he likes the body kicks. He likes to throw that rear kick, and anytime you have a southpaw versus orthodox, it's all about the rear hand and the rear leg. So he can work you at the body, slow you down a little bit, and then when it gets to the ground, he's just like next level on the ground. I referenced the Linnaeus fight, Mike Malott versus Linnaeus. We talked about earlier. For me, it was the arm triangle that he set up, and if you go back and watch it, he got the arm triangle from opposite side control. So normally you want to go to the side where you have the arm triangle in. You jump over to mount, you get that down, you cinch it up. He's locking it in from opposite side control. The only other person I've seen do that is Islam. And it just tells me that he has a crazy squeeze. I know in the end, Mike Malott gets to that side and he taps, but if you look at Linnaeus, he's already tapping before Malott even moves. So for that, he's been pretty impressive. Even in his last fight, I think he had like a one-arm guillotine that he finished his opponent with. Just really high-level stuff on the ground. And for me, going back to the Neil Magny, Ian Gary fight, Ian Gary beat up that lead leg, and Magny's an orthodox. And the fact that Magny couldn't switch to southpaw is so alarming to me that he got it so beat up that he would rather fight on one leg than to switch to southpaw. And so the difference in that fight is Ian Gary knocks Magny down a bunch of times and then lets Magny back up, says, come on, let's go, let's get back up, let's do it again, sort of thing. Mike Malott's not going to do that. If he knocks you down, he's going to jump into your guard. He's probably going to submit you or ground and pound. So I think this is a setup fight for Mike Malott. I got him early. I know the fight, the line's pretty juiced up there. I think he probably looks minus 400 if I'm being honest. I think he has multiple ways to win. I'm not racing to bet one win like Mike Malott's submission because I think it could be a KO. I think potentially it could be decision. In that Ian Gary fight, I took not Ian Gary to win inside the distance because I thought Magny was very durable. He's pretty, has a history of taking the fights deep. So I put not Ian Gary to not finish. And man, I was sweating that fight like crazy. He could have finished that at any time. Magny just looks like a shell of himself. And so in Mike Malott, I don't think that Mike Malott, I'm not saying that Mike Malott's better than Ian Gary. It's just the situations where he doesn't let Magny up. He'll follow you down to the ground. He has a great ground game there. So he has multiple paths to win. For Magny, honestly, I don't really see many wins out of him. It has to be like a sketchy split decision where he's like really pushing you up against the cage, working the clinch game and stuff. But I think Malott's he's too strong in the clinch. He's going to make it a better fight. Like he has multiple ways to win. So, and what I also noticed with Magny is that Magny has become the gatekeeper of the division. Anytime there's an up and comer, Ian Gary, Shavkat, Mike Malott, they feed him Ian Gary, like Neil Magny. He's like on the cusp of the ranked fighters. So if you beat Magny, you enter the rankings. And it's one of those showcase fights where, he'll take a paycheck. I saw something today. Magny, they wanted Magny to fight. He wasn't thinking of fighting. And they emailed him. And his coaches told him, no, I don't think you should take the fight. But he took the fight anyway. To me, that's like red flags everywhere, right? And it's just everything stacked against Magny. I don't really see it. So for me, that's the biggest parlay piece for me. I got him in early. I think minus 3.5 is fine because I think he wins most of the times inside the distance. I think that inside the distance line is probably juiced a little bit too high because I think the books know that's probably what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I'm all over the Malott side. I think he can win any way he really wants. It probably comes early, but I wouldn't be surprised if really anything happens.
Yeah, I agree. I want to touch on the first, that inside the distance line. Him inside the distance is like minus 230. So it's again, like you touched on, they're already pricing it in. They're basically saying, you know what, he's probably going to win inside the distance. And that's why I think depending on that 3.5 number, that's probably the better bang for your buck, depending on that number.
And it's one of those things where I taped it early. I got minus like 250 on Mike Malott money line. So,
oh wow, there you go.
I'm not going to play the inside the distance now that it's moved and stuff, right? So I'll just stay with my money line and be happy with it.
Yep. And not to say that Malott shouldn't be like a huge favorite, but I think it's more of just sort of a case of where Magny's at in his career. Obviously, again, the matchup as well, clear grappling path for Malott. Yep. I think he should look pretty easily as well.
Yep.
All right. The co-main event, title fight, Mayra Bueno Silva and Raquel Pennington. I've always honestly not that I've always wanted to fade Bueno Silva, but I just think that she's more so a moment winner than a minute winner. And that's going to get her in trouble in potentially fights like this and fights in the upper echelon of the division because, again, relying on those big moments. However, in a fight like this, I don't see a ton of grappling upside from Rocky. And so I feel like if it is standing for the most part, I do see her out voluming Bueno Silva, but I think Bueno Silva does probably have the bigger moments on the feet. And again, favors the judges at the end. So if we do end up getting 25 minutes, we get to the 25 minutes, I think Bueno Silva does win a decision, but I think she also has the much higher finishing upside here as well.
Yeah, for me, I agree with some of those points. I think okay, so off the bat, I like Rocky as the underdog. And so there's a couple of reasons. Is that, like you said, MBS is more, she's been more opportunistic, jumping on the knee bar. She has like five out of her 7 wins are from arm bars. So I go back to like the Polyana Viana type stats where if you're getting arm bars, you're on the bottom and stuff, right? She has a couple of ninja chokes which are fine, but other than getting the submission, I think that Pennington's a black belt. I think like she's pretty durable. So I don't think I don't think she grapples at all. I think Pennington wants to keep the fight standing. If she does grapple, it's going to be cage pushing in the clinch up against the fence. I think she can wear on Silva. Again, if it does go to the mat, it has to be like a Silva pulling guard, shooting. Maybe, Silva's only attempted 4 takedowns in her UFC career. Only 2 of them have been successful. So, but she's winning 83% of her fights by submission. So how is she doing it? Arm bars, knee bars, and things like that. So if Pennington doesn't engage in the grappling, I think Pennington's probably better on the feet. She doesn't have a ton of KO power, and I give her that, but she does have volume and pace and cage pushing. And one of the things that really stuck out to me is I go back to the Mayra Bueno Silva versus Manon Fiorot. I know Fiorot is nowhere compared to the striker that Pennington is, but what I notice is that as soon as Fiorot comes forward, MVS is putting the high guard up, and she backs up and says, no, that didn't help. And then she comes forward, and she, as Fiorot comes forward again, high guard defense, no, that didn't land, right? And so I feel like there's a way of nullifying MBS's offense by just using offense of yourself. Because she's always putting up the high guard and moving around. She's not going to have a lot of time to strike herself. So I think Pennington can win minutes on the feet by just out voluming her, outlasting her sort of thing. And then what really gets me is that it is a 5-round fight, and I've seen Mayra Bueno Silva sort of slow down in rounds 2. Rounds 2 and 3, like she's already like breathing a little bit harder. She's never gone 5 rounds. Pennington has a bunch of 5-round fights. She did get her leg chewed off by Nunes in 5 rounds and lasted all 5 rounds in that fight. So they call her Rocky. Same thing with Zombie Girl. She can take punishment. I don't really see a MBS KO because just the ability that Rocky can take the damage. And then just the forward pressure, the pace of Pennington, I think you can really wear on Silva. And Silva never going 4 rounds or 5 rounds. I think it's a big question mark. So I'd be concerned taking the Silva side, knowing that I think if it gets to 4 and 5, I think I give the huge edge to Pennington to win those rounds. And I'll be honest, I took some Pennington KO rounds 4 and 5. It's plus 10,000, plus 9,000, something ridiculous where you can't tell me it's not live. Just based on the cardio dynamic that I've seen, she's never gone 5 rounds. Pennington's in your face, able to push a pace. I think it could really wear on him, and I think Pennington could find a finish here. It's the KO line is out of this world, and I don't think it comes early. I do think if the KO comes, it probably runs 3 and 4 and 5. So I did sprinkle that side. Don't hate me for it, but I love that look. For me, it's dog or pass for Pennington. You could sort of hedge yourself by taking like a Silva round 1 submission, but other than that, I think Pennington takes over the fight.
I don't think anybody's going to be hating on you for plus 9,000 or plus 10,000 ever.
Yeah.
We worship those kind of bets out here. All right, well, we have made it to the main event, Art. Sean Strickland and DDP. Take it away. What are your thoughts?
So for me, I'll just put an asterisk before I do the breakdown here. I have a problem, and it's betting against Dricus du Plessis. Like, I don't think he's very good. I don't think he's very technical. I think he's strong. I think he has power, and I think he can come forward and land big shots. But on paper, when I'm watching the film, I'm just like, oh man, that's so bad. Like the ways he's getting reversed, he's getting these like takedowns that get reversed. The way that he like flinches every time somebody throws a punch to his face, like he's like closing his eyes. It's not the greatest looks for me. So anytime I have a chance of fading Dreykus, I try to take it. It hasn't been successful, and I'll be honest, I've lost a lot of money fading him. So that's why I put that asterisk there. I think for him, it's just been a strength of schedule, like good matchups, like not the best wins. Like he fights like Darren Till, and Darren Till has like zero takedown defense, but Darren Till was winning that fight up until like sort of the end there. He fights Derek Brunson. That Derek Brunson only has 1 round of cardio as well. Derek Brunson was winning that first fight, first round as well. So I was big on the Robert Whitaker fight, and I was there. He got starched in round 2, and so I don't know what to make of him. Like I know he has power, and I know he can hit hard. But Sean Strickland is one of those guys. He's a weird matchup. He has a specific fighting style that you can't really replicate. He's in your face. He's Philly shell. He's all straight punches. 34% of his shots are just single jabs. So his just singles jabs. 13% are 1-2s, and then 9% are the single 2s. He really only mixes in 1-2s, anything just straight down the middle, right? 1-2s, double jab, 1-1-2 sort of thing. He does look for the high kick, but it's more of a push kick to keep the distance, things like that. So I think this fight comes down to how Dreykus really approaches this fight. Okay. So if Dreykus comes out and tries to play the technical game with him, stand on the outside, outbox Strickland, I think Strickland has his way with him. He takes him into late waters and then finish him. For Dreykus to win, for me, it's you have to come out, you have to rely on your chin, you have to rely on your power, make it a brawl, come forward, make it dirty, and find the finish within the first round or 2. Anything past there, I go back to the Bueno Silva side. He's never gone past in the UFC. I know some of the regional stuff, that whole thing about his breathing and only getting 8% of his air, and now he's fixed his nose. I don't believe it, man. Just the way he looks visibly gassed. It's not just his breathing. He's slowing down. You can see some of the power coming off his shots. So I think if Strickland can get this in the later rounds, Strickland's only been knocked down 3 times in his UFC career. Really good striking defense. A lot of it, again, he's rolling with the strikes. I don't think Dreykus is anything that Strickland hasn't seen. Strickland's seen some big power punches, sort of been able to deal with those power shots before. Does Dreykus really bring a pedigree that really is out there? No, he's not very technical. He just throws power. He has like these forward blitzes where he's like right, left, right, left, right, left. And so if Strickland can sort of deal with that within the first 2 rounds, I think, again, he takes over. I have to assume Strickland wins rounds 3, 4, and 5. So similar to the Pennington side, I'm taking Strickland KO rounds 3, 4, and 5. I'm actually parlaying the 2. So if you do, I did a round robin of Strickland KO round 3, 4, 5 and Pennington KO round 3, 4, 5. It was $50 a leg, and it ranges from 45,000 to 130,000. So if it hits in any of those legs, it's $50 to win 130,000. I'm willing to take the risk. We haven't seen Dreykus really go that far. Strickland can push a pace. I think both fights are pretty similar in that matter. I do lean the Sean Strickland side, and because again, I'm trying to fade Dreykus, and Strickland just has a way of coming forward and making it his type of fight. For Dreykus, he might find some success with the outside low kicks. He does like that low kick. But we saw in the Adesanya fight, Strickland's really learned how to check those leg kicks, make it, not really. Even saw Nina try to kick him today or yesterday, damage her leg by getting that leg checked. So he's working on that leg kicks. I know for the Adesanya fight, he really wanted to work on his wrestling and the grappling, but he didn't bring it out against in that fight either. So also, he spent that last training camp with Ankalaev. The Ankalaev just fought last week. He fought this whole camp with Ankalaev. Ankalaev, showing him different looks in grappling. I don't think Dreykus really has anything for him. So I'm on the Sean Strickland side. You might find a better line live, but I'm okay with the money line. I was going to take a minus 150, minus 160 when it opened. I waited, and now I'm getting closer to even. So I'm okay with that line. I like that side.
Yeah, I think this fight is very tricky. I've kind of fallen more so on your side with I'm trying to look to fade Du Plessis just because I feel like his game is not very technical. But at the same time, I think my new approach in 2024 is just more so accepting some of these guys that, they might not look and be the most technical, but their game works. They're powerful either in the striking or in the grappling. I mentioned before, even though Roy Val's not, some elite talent, but his craziness, his chaotic nature causes issues for people. Same with Du Plessis. To your point, I do think this more often than not is either Du Plessis in rounds 1 or 2 or Sean late. Like, I don't see a ton of merit to Du Plessis winning rounds 4 and 5. Could he win the first 3 and then win a 48-47, sure. I would much rather fish for a live line on Sean though than enter pre personally with the potential danger early. I wish the under 3.5 wasn't as juiced as it was. It's -175. If that was around like -150, 155, I think that wouldn't be too bad of a spot. But
see, I
could
like
see
the
it
over
extending
kind of
late.
thing.
Yeah, I could see it extending late. Yeah.
I think I got some Strickland decision at +350. If you tell me Strickland goes to decision, that's most of, again, I go back to his straight punches. Almost 50-60% of his strikes are straight punches. Very hard to knock somebody out with just a single jab, a single two. He doesn't really mix in spinning back elbows, uppercuts, hooks, things like that. So it's just more of a pace thing. If he does find a finish, it's really just based on attrition. So I got that round robin with the KO 3-4-5, but I think he could win a decision. So I'm sort of covered once it gets past 2. If Strickland wins, then I'm good. I'm great. If he wins a decision, I'm okay with that as well.
Nice. Perfect. I was just going to ask you, and you obviously give out that round robin, but do you have any other parlays for the people that you want to shout out before we wrap this bad boy up?
Yeah, and I'll be honest. So the odds have been trickling out throughout the day, and yesterday they only really got released in DraftKings recently. So I haven't put a ton together. I haven't seen any same game parlay lines. I know they really only released the main event, and the same game parlays is just like plus decision or KO, right? So one of those ones I never touch. Yeah. So I'm waiting for the same game parlays lines just to see. I do have a couple of in mind that I think could be sneaky and live. When I do post them, I'll post them onto my page there, get them out to you guys. But yeah, like I think we touched on some of those tricky ones. Like if I had to go pretty safe, you go, Malott inside the distance, Jillian Robertson there, even Linnes KO, Evloev decision. Those are all pretty safe, pretty high, probably hit at a high rate. And then you have the one-offs like the KO round 3-4-5 sort of thing. So I got a sprinkle of like a little bit of both. We'll see what happens. I'm super excited. I'm going to the event this weekend. So my buddies are getting a box. We're going to go all out. I have like over $25,000 in bets. So I'm going nuts.
Nice.
The bankroll's going out the window. We're staying over. We're going to the United or the event on the Friday, staying over and then going to the event on Saturday. So it's going to be a great weekend. I'll try to keep you guys updated with how it goes. But yeah, if you see me passed out somewhere, that's probably just because I had a great weekend.
Awesome. Well, that will wrap it up for UFC 297. Art, I would like to thank you again for joining the pod where as our normal host, John, couldn't make it this evening. Any shout outs, anything you like to plug before we head out of here?
Yeah, just follow me social media. I'm at Mr. Electrocute. What I've done recently is we have a company called Fighting Stats, and so I have a team of data scientists that sort of go back and collect stats for me. That's what some of the stats that I've been quoting is that you can't find these stats anywhere else. You can't go to UFC stats and find this stuff out. We're tracking all the movements within the fight. So I know when people go forward, go backwards, when they're switching to orthodox, when they're going to southpaw. When it goes down to the ground, I can tell you how much time is spent in each position, whether or not they're looking for the submission or whether or not they want to hang out in half guard sort of thing. So it's given me and I use it in my analysis, and that's why I find it helps me the most. But it's been given me sort of an edge that nobody else really has. I share to, I have a Patreon, patreon.com/fighting stats. I share all the stats there. It helps you get an edge. Again, the sports books don't even have it. So it's one of those early things where if we have an edge, we're going to use it as much as we can. We're going to beat it until the sports books adjust. So I'm going to continue doing that. That's what I found to be successful recently. But check it out. I think there's a 7-day free trial. Check out all the stats there. Everything that you can shake a stick at. But it really tells a story sometimes when you see the numbers on the page.
Awesome, man. Sounds super intriguing for sure. Definitely a different way to look at it. Obviously, for sure. Thanks
for having me, Danny. I really appreciate it. Hope I really filled those shoes for John. I hope he's having a great time in Vegas and passed out somewhere as well. Yeah, great to have me.
Yes, no problem, man. We're wishing John as well a good and safe betting card this weekend as well for this pay-per-view, and that'll wrap it up for us. So like and subscribe before on your way out, and that'll do it for us here.